It's time to heal for real. This video will cover a massive in-depth guide for healing in the Elder Scrolls Online Update 29. This build is what I primarily use in 4-player dungeons, specifically hard modes, Dragonstar Arena, and so on. So if you're looking for some all-around information on healer gear, skills, passes, and even leveling, this is the video for you. Timestamps are below if you wish to skip ahead. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn alerts on, and click that join button, and consider becoming a member so I can produce more Elder Scrolls Online content. Okay, so you want to play as a healer, you don't know where to start and what to do. So we're going to start with the basics, and that's leveling as a healer. How do you level as a healer? Well, you don't. You level as a DPS. Now, the trick to leveling as a healer is knowing what you're going to use at endgame. We're going to cover gear and skills and so on. But basically, you want to get all of your class skill lines leveled up. That's pretty obvious. But also, Destro Resto. So what I would do is equip a Destruction Staff right away, and then swap and equip a Restoration Staff right away. So you can just equip a Destruction Staff pretty much your entire playthrough. And then what you're going to do is load up at least one skill on your bar of each of the class skill lines. So that gives you 3, leveling these skill lines equally. Then you got one Destruction Staff, you have it equipped, and you're going to equip a Restoration Staff ability after you've just had some experience points in it and start leveling these up. You're almost going to want to level up, max out more of all of these throughout your playthrough. So it seems weird to have a Destruction Staff on your bar and have a Restoration Staff ability that's dead. You can't even use it. But what will happen is the game registers experience points based on what's equipped on your bar, and if you have something equipped as well. So you can level the entire game and really never even use a Restoration Staff. You can put a 2-hander on here if you want it. That way when you get to endgame, you're not severely hampered trying to go back, and then you reach 50, you have to go back and level a bunch of skills, and you're grinding still beyond 50. So play a Destruction Staff. The build you're going to use pretty much primarily for damage is Puncturing Sweeps. So you're going to swap this in and out depending on what's going on. And then you can level up another skill line faster by putting an ultimate here. So 3, at least 1 of the class skill lines, equip a Destro, equip a Resto Staff ability or more. Another thing you're going to want to focus on, a couple other useful things you're going to have to use at endgame is Aggressive Warhorn. This is ranked up by PvP, so you can do some low B battlegrounds to get access to this. You get access to it pretty early, but if you're going to be doing trials and hardcore raids and stuff, you're going to need to have access to this ability. So don't skip out on PvP entirely. It doesn't take much to get to this Alliance rank, and now they have a boost where you can just do a couple battlegrounds, really, a couple Cyrodiil Zerg fights, and max this thing out, get really quick, and then level it, morph it, because you'll need this at endgame. Another thing you'll need at endgame is Undaunted skill line. This Mystic Orb is super powerful, and so is Blood Altar. I mean, most of these abilities now are really, really nice and juicy. So I have this at max at 10, but if you can just do some of the normal normal dungeons while you're leveling up, the veterans, when you hit endgame, this thing will skyrocket. There's a guide on it. I have an old guide on it that's very easy to go around getting drink. But there's so many normal dungeons now, gang. If you just queued up for randoms all day and did some pledges here and there, you'll get to this rank real quick. Undaunted Command, this is useful to max out anyways. You get these passives. Every little bit helps. And even if you're only using one armor type, it still adds up. So consider getting this maxed out too. And then lastly is your alchemy. Medicinal use while using potions result lasts 30% longer. When you're chugging down spell pots and magic pots, they come with magic regeneration. So I'll go here, I'll get a little potion here. So magic regeneration increases, immediately restores magic, major intellect. So 30% magic recovery, look at the cooldown, 47 seconds. So with that passive, it goes longer than the actual cooldown. So you can essentially have 100% uptime on magic recovery. Same thing with spell damage and spell crit as well. So you can eliminate a couple abilities if you're chugging these down, making this super, super important to get alchemy level. So that's my tips for leveling up as a healer. Now let's talk about the gear. So endgame gear as a healer. There is a bazillion, million, trillion different ways to do this, okay? I'm going to show you about 3 different ways. What I like, and keep in mind the context of what I'm playing. The context of what I'm playing primarily is 4-player dungeons. No matter who you are and what build you have, people are going to tell you you're wrong. So find something that works for you, and if you like it and your team's not dying and you're doing well and clearing the content you like, do it. Try different things, get out of your comfort zone, but ultimately, it's your build. If it's working, your team likes it, keep doing it. So what I've come up with is kind of some things that people were using in the past is Hollow Fang. So what I do is I have 5 pieces on my destruction staff bar. So this is more of a complex build. So Hollow Fangs, when you critically heal or critically damage, it spawns a little blood ball, blows up, magic, minor vitality. This build is called the Battery. So there is a lot more sustain in this game, but if you can allow your DPS to not use any sustain sets to max out their food and you provide the sustain, they'll do a lot of damage. So providing healing is great, but also providing buffs, resources is the primary focus of the Battery. And that's how we do it, is all of our gear is centered around adding damage, adding resources. So Hollow Fangs is a real good one, but a little bit complex. So 1, 2, 3, okay? And then it's on my front bar here. Hollow Fang, Ice Staff. Why am I using a charge Ice Staff? Okay, well I got kind of schooled on this, but we're gonna go into help, okay? So I got kind of schooled on this. We're going to go into help, and we're going to go into elemental status effects. Dealing damage, elemental damage, has a chance to apply a status effect. If we go to Frost, applies minor maim for 4 seconds. Reduces target damage done. While wielding a Frost staff, also applies minor brittle 4 seconds, increasing the critical damage done to the target. So the Frost staff is unique that you can block, and it uses magicka, not stamina. Number one, that's really nice for folks that are not so used to mechanics. They need a little bit of extra juice because they run out of stamina and they dodge too much or they block too much and they just die as a healer. That can be really, really useful. But look at this. Applies minor maim, applies minor brittle. Those are really, really good. And remember, the Templar, the Nova ultimate that I'm using, applies major maim. So you're not going to keep 100% uptime because it's only on your destruction staff and you're not a damage dealer. So is this optimal for every single group? No. But for 4-player groups where you're basically doing pickup groups, you're hanging out with friends, you're not super optimized, this can save and do a lot more damage because more damage, more debuffs, it's just really, really good. So this is only going to be active on my front bar, Ice Fang. Again, it's not going to be 100% uptime, but it's very, very noticeable, and you should be on your front bar every 10 or so seconds. So while it's not 100% uptime, it's not perfect. It's really good. Back bar, I have Asylum's Resto as my primary. You have a bunch of different options. When you cast Blessing of Protection, cost of your magic and stam abilities are reduced by 21% for 3 seconds. So I cast Combat Prayer, which we're going to get into skills and why that's going to be relevant soon. And then I can do a bunch of other abilities real quick, at least 1 or 2, get them off. Especially a heavy, really cost one like a Breath of Life or an Orb or a Spear, and it's going to be reduced significantly. Basically, allowing me not to go out of magic. Some other options you have here, the Maelstrom Restoration Staff, another really, really good one that you can also apply. I would say play around with them, and depending on the context of what you're doing. And also the Masters one, so let's go to Masters here. Masters Restoration Staff, the initial here of Grand Healing, invigorate your group. Magic or stamina. So basically, depending on what you're using, if you're doing a trial and you're going to be using Grand Healing, like Illustrious Healing for major AoE healing, the Master Restoration Staff makes sense. If you're doing something small group and you want to try this is really good as well. This is a bit more of a selfish thing for me specifically, but I do like it. Swap it in and out, see what you got. Monster Helm, I'm running the Symphony of Blades. I just got this thing. 1 piece is amazing, 2 pieces incredible. So you notice healing allies under 50% resources grants them more resources. So it has a big long cooldown, but I'm telling you, between this, Hollow Fang, and then if you swap whatever staff you want, your team will notice a lot more juice. Now, they're not optimized traits. You should be running Divines, best in slot all around. I'm running 5-1-1. I like the max stats still. I don't really need a whole lot of offensive penetration, so 5-1-1 for me really feels nice, give me a big, nice stat pool, especially stamina. Believe it or not, I dodge roll a lot. I'm CC breaking a lot of these dungeons, so max stamina is really, really relevant to me. So you can slot a lot of different things in here. There's so much flexibility in ESO. I would say play around with it. I mean, there are tons and tons of different options. One that's popular is Sentinel. That's a really good one down here. So it's another basically AoE pool of resources, and it heals as well. Mine's primarily focused on resources only, so that's why I go with the Hollow Fang in that. But don't limit yourself. I would always say try things in and out. Engine Guardian, that's more of a selfish one that doesn't optimize your team so well. So we're really trying to focus on optimizing our team. That's why I'm not using that in some of the other ones. That's Hollow Fang, the first 5-piece. That's the Monster Helm. The second 5-piece that I'm running is Spell Power Cure. It's a staple in Elder Scrolls Online forever. When you heal, grants Major Courage for 5 seconds. Increases weapon and spell damage. So this is our damage optimizing set that we're going to run and help people out. And you'll have 2 sets, one set on 5-piece for resources, one 2-piece, and then you could even have a resource back here. So you're going to have basically 2 to 3 mechanics to optimize resources, and then 1 mechanic on your gear to optimize damage. But this is a complex setup. Not a lot of people are going to have access to all this stuff and bells and whistles. So something I've used forever is basically Worm Cult. Worm Cult is fantastic. Grants magic recovery to you up to 12 group members. So 12 group members, this thing is made for trials. And what you can do is you can swap this on and then take away the fancy staffs. So you have 5 Worm Cult running at all times. Or you can run Head and Shoulders and drop a Monster Helm and then have a fancy staff. Either way you do it. Typically 5 Worm running at all times and 5 Spell Power Cure running at all times. You can either decide to run a Monster Helm with it, or you can decide to run one of the fancy staffs like Asylum, Maelstrom, or whatever you want. Either way, that's a really, really good option. Let's say you don't have the option to get the fancy Monster Helms. That's not really your speed. What I would do is craft 2 5-piece sets, okay? So let's go to Julianos. Julianos is a very simple setup. It adds spell damage, spell crit, max magic. All these are relevant to your build. Spell damage and specifically will add to healing and damage. So it's an all-around really good set for that. Another set you can run, it's a selfish sustain set, but reduce the cost of your magic abilities. So both of these are craftable. Everyone has access to this. So I would say do the jewelry, all of your body pieces, that's 2 5-pieces right there. Then you don't have any of this stuff, it's very, very simple. Just run the willpower. So willpower, Destro Resto, or double Destro if you want, add a lot more spell damage and max magic. So these 3 pieces of gear, basically you can buy off traders or you can just go craft yourself. Very, very obtainable. And you can get through most of the content in the game. Maybe not the super hard mode dungeons and Black Rose Prison and stuff, but the average content you're doing, you're going to heal for a lot and do really well. So that's the third option I would run if you don't have all the other bells and whistles. But Hollow Fang, Symphony of Blades, and Spell Power Cure, I am just loving PvE healing. It's so much fun again. Couple things to cover real quick. Traits and glyphs. Just standard magic, max magic traits. Divines on every single thing. So I haven't golded this out. I ran out of Transmute Stone, so we'll get that switched to Divines. And then I do run 511, like I said. I would run a heavy Symph of Blades and then a medium here. So it's not optimized because I haven't got the heavy version of it yet. But I'd run a heavy Divines, medium Shoulders. But otherwise, we're looking pretty good, pretty optimized. And I would not gold out this gear unless you have a bazillion gold. I'd run 1 Magic Recovery, Arcane, and the rest of them in spell damage. This gives a really good balanced setup between damage and sustain. So that's pretty much the gear setup. Let's move on to skills. Okay, my skill loadout, this is really going to change depending on what you're playing. So when you enter a dungeon, trial, or whatever you're doing, don't be beholden to just one loadout. If you've watched my videos, you have to understand things change. I might have to drop Purifying Light for a taunt on a random mob. I might have to drop this and that for another sustained ability or some random debuff or trap if I'm doing more damage. So what you go into a dungeon or into a fight with might not be what you come out. So make this your own and be flexible with it. So I'm on my destruction staff. We're going to go through every ability in detail. I'm going to explain why I use it. So first ability up we're going to cover is Channel Focus. It basically grants you resistance, gives you some magic recovery, and standing in it grants you more resistance. So let's look at this puppy. Our resistance 17k, 11k. Okay, so we're pretty squishy in light armor. Drop it down. We're standing in the rune. And we're at 20,000. We step out of the rune. Okay, Channel Focus goes down, and our resistance goes back to this. As you can see, channel focus primarily used for resistances, that's great, but also magic recovery. This is not a buff. So you can stack this magic recovery with your gear magic recovery, with the major magic recovery from the potions, with the minor, and just get a ton of magic recovery. And the duration is 20 seconds. It's a very low cost. But remember, you need to go back into the rune to kind of proc it. But let's look at when we activate this, what does the passives do? Sacred Ground while standing in your rune, and for up to 4 seconds after leaving it, gain minor mending, increasing your healing done by 8%. So this will also stack with major mending, which we can get another couple different ways. Also increases the amount of you can block for the duration. So obviously blocking is not going to be that important, but if we're using a frost staff, it can come in a pinch. But really, it's the minor mending. So it's low cost, minor mending. It's going to give us some defenses, make us a little bit less squishy. It's fantastic ability, low cost, can't recommend it enough. Now we're going to move over to Dawn's Wrath, and that's Purifying Light. So I consider this as a flex spot on my bar, depending on what I'm doing. If I want to go more DPS heavy, if I want to go more ranged heavy, or just, you know, something else, this is kind of the one that I would take off, especially if I need to taunt something weird. But let's look at this. Think of it as a balloon. So you cast this on a target. You can cast it on multiple targets. As it takes damage, it fills up like a balloon fills up with water. Once it reaches a certain point, certain time, duration, 6 seconds, it explodes. So if you copy the maximum amount of damage, this can really burst something down and do a lot. But the nice thing is when the effect ends, it puts a pool of sunlight attached to the enemy, and it heals folks over time. So think of it as a nice bursting tool, a nice damaging tool. It's pretty low cost, it has a nice range, and then it's going to heal over time and do damage. So it's going to do 2 functions as well. Let's look at the Dawn's Wrath passives to see what this does as well. So Prism here, casting a Dawn's Wrath, generates 3 ultimate every 6 seconds. Well, this should be cast every 6 seconds. So it's going to be a nice way to proc ulti-gen. Between this and another skill we're going to cover later, Radiant Oppression, you're probably going to be using a Dawn's Wrath ability pretty close to 6, 8, 10 seconds, getting a nice stream of ultimate gen. Another reason to use it, casting a Dawn's Wrath ability grants minor sorcery to you and your group for 20 seconds, increasing your spell damage by 10%. So this is also going to stack with major sorcery that you're going to get from potions or other buffs, meaning casting this reliably or your Radiant Oppression will increase your magic damage, and increase your healing for you and your group. Fantastic reason to use it. Consider this a flex spot since we have another Dawn's Wrath ability. If this is too complicated to run and you're just having too many buffs and so forth to do, I just put Inner Light on here for some extra magic, and so you wouldn't have an ability you have to fuss with. But does damage, gets ulti-gen passively every 6 seconds, it heals, and when I put this on a boss, who's it going to heal? Well, it's going to heal the tank. So I love this ability. Next up, we're going to go to Destro, and the reason we slotted Destro. So Elemental Blockade's fantastic. Unstable wall, so it's going to be a big, nice AoE, 10 seconds duration. The Frost deals less damage, but grants shields and immobilizes chilled enemies, so it's not going to immobilize everyone in a massive, huge AoE. It's not going to grant these huge, massive damage shields, but it's enough to make a difference, especially if other folks are running Lightning. That used to be the previous meta, but I'd play around with it. I still love Frost Staff the way I play in the group content that I'm doing with pickup groups and so on. So it's an ability that you should still run offensively, AoE, clearing trash, and single target. It's great. Another damage ability that you're going to do is Blazing Spear. This is kind of swappable depending on what you're doing. I like it because it's ranged, it's castable, it does a lot of AoE damage, and it does damage over time. So it's pretty nice. Where Puncturing Sweeps is more of a spammable, more if you're going to go into a dungeon and do damage, but I like this for really healing because I can do damage in an AoE on a pinch. I can provide a synergy in a pinch. It's just really good and really fun. Another ability that shares this kind of synergy here, and then we're going to get to on our back bar, is Undaunted Mystic Orbs. So you notice it restores the same amount of magic with the synergy. So you're not always going to use one or the other. The advantage of this is when I throw Spear down, I can choose where it goes. Right? This is obvious, but let's say I have a tank over here and I got 4 DPS standing over here. So the 4 DPS, that takes about good 3-4 seconds to get there, where I can throw this on a tank. So if they're sharing the same synergy, I get the DPS going over here, I get the tank, And you can even go even further, way back there. So that's another reason why I like to use it. It does AoE damage. You can really spot on demand where you need to be. Sometimes a DPS is clear in the back, sometimes a healer or tank. So it gives you that in the pinch resource sustain for your group. Another reason to have it on the front bar or an Adric Spear ability like sweeps on the bar increases your crit damage done. When activating the Adric Spear ability, gain minor protection for 6 seconds. Another buff. Really good ability. Consider it flexible if you like to do sweeps and get up close to melee, or if you're primarily playing a healer and want the advantage of range resource sustain, go with Spear. And then J-Beam, Dawn's Wrath again, Radiant Oppression. It's basically an executable. Right around 40% it seems like is the best way to cast it. It can get magic intensive just casting it over and over, but the lower the health goes, the better it's going to hit. So I typically cast this around 40%, but just remember, it's a channel. It's 1.8 seconds. So don't want to get caught with your pants down with Radiant Oppression, meaning you don't want to channel it and someone gets hit, cleaved, smashed, your buffs aren't up. So what I like to do is when I'm getting near that 40% health range, I'm going to fully rebuff everything. Make sure my hots are on, I'm proccing everything I need to do. Maybe get an ulti down, so that way when I throw this puppy out, I'm not just getting nuked down, or someone gets nuked and I have to block cancel it. So if you do have to cancel it, you just hit the block key real quick, and so that will cancel the channel, and you'll be able to bar swap and heal if you need to. If you're a brand new healer and this looks way too complicated, no problem. Drop Radiant Oppression. Just put Breath of Life on both your bars. Until you get the hang of bar swapping and knowing when damage is coming in and out, don't mess with it. Just put it on both bars. It's better that people are alive than you do a little bit of damage. So if you're getting frustrated, you're getting caught in the channels, don't mess with it. Put Breath of Life on both bars and you'll be fine. Ultimate slots here. You have a bunch of different options. I'm going to go with something I've used forever and I just think logically makes a lot of sense, and that's Solar Prison. Solar Prison costs a lot of ult, has a 10-second duration, does a lot of damage in AoE, okay? But major main. So major main, reducing their damage down by 10%, which can proc with our Frost Brittle effect for minor. So reducing about, 15% or so? That's a pretty big reduction. You're going to have to drop it like it's hot, kind of in a big circle. So you're going to pick like an area, just like Blazing Spear would, and drop it. Typically, I drop this when I know a boss, an enemy, or a cluster of mobs is centered around one area. Both morphs are good. The reason I go with Solar Prison is the synergy adds a ton of damage, and plus the stun is really, really good. This isn't always going to stun the boss because a lot of them can't be stunned, but if there's tons and tons of ads, pretty much like every fight in Elder Scrolls Online, they'll just squish them, giving you a nice big break because it's going to reduce damage. Someone's going to hit that synergy, do a huge damage in an AoE, and just flatten those extra mobs. But consider this is flexible, so you can also run a bunch of different stuff here. Shooting Star. If you want something cheaper, does a lot of damage, good AoE, good ultimate return, this is a good option. If you want some massive AoE just to clear trash poles and rotate them, Elemental Range, another great option. If you're doing trials and you need to rotate ultimates, that's kind of your thing in the trials group, Aggressive Warhorn is really good. So listen to your raid leader if you're doing trials and what they want you to run. But when I'm running 4-man groups and so forth, I just drop this reliably because I know it's going to work. It's going to flatten enemies and make that boss hit a lot harder. So that's our Destro staff. So typically when I'm playing on my Destro, I just do this. I blockade, I drop that, and then I'll do a Dawn's Wrath. So if we look at our buffs and debuffs, this thing lasts 20 seconds, right? So it makes sense to cast this first. This thing lasts 10 seconds. It makes sense to cast that next. This thing lasts 8 seconds, or 10 seconds as well, excuse me. And we make sense to cast that third, with this being 6 seconds. So logically, if you're looking at buffs and timers, you got 20, 10, 10, and then Purifying Light. You could bar swap. Are you always going to be maintain 100% uptime? No, because what's going to happen is people are going to stand in red, you might get nuked, you might get stunned or whatever. But when you get back to your bar, just kind of remember, that's what you're looking at doing, is maintaining your circle. Visually, with all the buffs and all the timers, you can see that pretty clearly. Blockade, you can see that pretty clearly. Spear is kind of independent, so you don't always cast this just, reflectively. You're just going to cast it kind of for AoE damage, or if a tank's over here and needs some. And then Purifying Light, you're going to pretty much always cast that when you can on this bar. So if you're coming back to this bar to or cast your channel or blockade, just throw out a purifying light. If you can squeeze in the time, it'll add a lot of resources, a lot of healing, and it'll really do well. Going back to this bar here, the Restoration Staff bar. Let's start with the Ultimate. Why not? Ultimate, again, this one's flexible. Restoration Staff Life Giver. The reason I like this is it has a big radius, 5-second duration. So it's not going to last long, but it's going to heal like a truck and basically keep someone alive. So a lot of times when we're facing new content and we don't know what the hell we're doing, I will cast this while I'm doing a res. I will cast this when there's a new mechanic. I will cast this, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So it saves my life. It's mobile, has a nice range, and it's dirt cheap. So it's up pretty reliably. But again, you can flex this in and out depending on what you want. Typically, you probably have an offensive ult and an aggressive warhorn if you're doing a trial. Our main primary spammable is Breath of Life. Hasn't changed much. It's a massive magic cost. So you do not want to rely on this. Pretty much when I Breath of Life is when I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Or when I see a tank just drop 20, 30,000 HP and I just need to pick them back up, max health real quick. That's typically when I'll cast this thing. Other than that, you really don't want to rely on this as your primary means to heal because it's just too magic expensive. So try to rely on other things like heals over time or combat prayer for your primary heal mechanic. But as a burst heal, oh man, it's range. It picks out the target for you. It's really good. Another really good ability, Undaunted, okay? So you're going to have to do group dungeons, arenas, and trials to get this up. There's so much content in the game that should not be hard anymore. Mystic Orb. It throws a slow ball that deals magic damage every half second. This thing does a lot of damage, even as a healer. When they hit that synergy, it's going to cause the orb to explode, dealing even more damage and restoring magic or stamina. So then we go to Harness Magic. So Harness Magic could be flexible depending on if you know what you're doing in the fights or not. It's a damage shield. It's 6 seconds. It gives me a massive damage shield. So if I combine Harness Magic, cast my Life Giver ult, and I would need to rest someone or I need to stand in red for a second, I'm not going to just get instant nuked unless there's some crazy mechanic. It just gives me time to think and then kind of plot out what I need to do. It's selfish, meaning I'm not shielding anyone else, but if you go down, everyone's going down. So make sure you have some way to survive. If you're comfortable with the fights, you know the mechanics, swap this puppy out. So something you could swap it out for, you're doing trials, Illustrious Healing, good old Healing Springs, they renamed it, does still really, really well. Healing for 1 second every 12 seconds. But consider this kind of your back bar flex spot. If you wanted more offense, you could do that, different buff. Blood Altar is another one people are running quite frequently. Another really, really good ultimate that you can apply in the AoE. So you're running trials, you could swap things in and out based on if you need AoE healing or you need survivability independently on your own. Another ability that I run, heal over time, Radiating Regeneration. They renamed it. So this was the old mutagen morph, and what this does is heals up to 3 allies, a lot of healing for 10 seconds. So this is really nice because it lasts a while and it's a steady stream of healing, and it's going to go really well with our Hollow Fang staff here, our Hollow Fang set. So when we cast this and we go to our Destro bar to rebuff and recast our damage abilities, it's going to proc that damage pool. And you can see this effect only occurs every 9 seconds. So reliably, we should be on our Destruction Staff bar every 10 seconds or so. No, you're not going to get 100% uptime, but it'll be enough proc to really make a difference in your group sustain. And this heals very, very well, and the cost isn't dramatic. So if you put Radiating Regeneration on your folks, and you're using Purifying Light on your tank and some other damage, that's a good amount of healing passively that you're not having to sit there and spam Breath of Light. So consider making this a priority in your rotation, a must. Speaking of priority in your rotation, Combat Prayer. This thing is awesome. It does so much. It heals really strong. It's a very strong AoE heal. The difference with this is it's targetable, right? So Breath of Life, I can just like hold my eyes closed and click Breath of Life and it goes to whoever's low. This one, you kind of have to point, right? And it goes in a little conal right in front of you. So that's the trick with this, and you'll get good at positioning yourself to make maximum use of this. So what it does, so it grants Major Berserk and Minor Resolve. So Minor Resolve, fantastic, but Minor Berserk, incredible. So this is really why we're casting this. Minor Resolve will stack with Major, so physical resistance and spell resistance. So let's go back to our channel focus, right? So we have Major here, and we have Minor. We were at 20,000. Now we're at 32. See? Even in light armor. Do this to your tank, they're hitting pretty high numbers. So combat prayer is great defensively, but minor berserk offensively, that's incredible. Some classes, some gear sets already have this, but there's almost one person in your party that doesn't. So I would almost always run this. Could you flex it out? Absolutely. But you're probably going to be better off slotting this to have 100% uptime if you can. So I would consider making this a must and a staple. And you can rely on this for healing primarily. Okay, so if you look at the tooltip, 7293, I'm not fully buffed or anything. So if a DPS takes 11, 12k damage and they're almost half health or so, rely on this to heal them if they're in range versus Breath of Life. Look at the cost. 2,700 versus 3,900. Much cheaper. It adds a couple buffs. You're not going to go right away. They're going to do more damage and have more resistance. So rely on combat prayer when you can aim it. The trick is aiming it. A lot of times your DPS is going to kind of be standing by each other, right? So they're going to be healing. So it's going to take some time to practice going like this and knowing the fights. Let's talk about champion points. Everyone's new favorite thing. Look, I got 8 more to spend. Ooh, let's get this. What do we got? Some more sneak. Let's do it. Okay, so priority-wise for me, what I'm looking at doing is if I'm first taking something, Steed Blessing increases your out of combat movement speed 20%. That's a really nice one if you're just looking for a slottable. Treasure Hunter increases the quality of items you find in chest. Okay, I gotta explain how good this is. This Hall of Fame staff, I had to find one piece in a dungeon. This took me 3 hours to find it in a treasure chest. Running the dungeon on normal over and over and over. Took me 3 hours. That sounds like a lot. That's nothing in comparison to what I used to have to do. Nothing. So was it RNG based? Yes. But I'm telling you right now, gang, I'm telling you, this huge difference. I don't know what percentage this is, but I was getting weapons, jewelry running normal all day, every day. And if you could run bet and just do it over and over quickly, you'd be getting even better items because they get better at bet. So I make this a priority if you're a dungeon crawler like me and you have a lot of champion points to get it. And then these are just like little passive ones, increase the amount of gold and stuff like that. You're really trying to come down here and get rationer, add minutes to duration of any food or drink, especially if you're running scrolls or potions to increase your XP. This can add up because they're very expensive, and basically there's no reason not to run them if you have the gold to run them. Liquid efficiency, when you use a potion or poison, you have a 10% chance not to consume it. It's a nice quality of life thing, not totally necessary, but for me, taking this D is really nice. There's some other ones out here if you don't have access to get all the way down here that you could take. But again, I like these two down here, the Steed and Treasure Hunter. The blue tree is a bit of a deep dive here. So up here, more damage. And this is kind of the healing tree. So I start with like the Eldritch Insight. Another one here, you can get a shiny right away, slottable. Arcane Supremacy, Max Magic, that's a no-brainer for us. And then you're going to go up here and get your other slottables. But before you do that, this Preparation and Hardy, these are really good. Quick Recovery, Element Aegis, these are very good for defense. So if you're getting destroyed right away, I would really go down to Preparation right away and drill down on this and see if you can max this puppy out. It should make a big difference in your survivability. And then the slottables you're going to want to get Bless, so increase your 1% per stage, 4% max. Not even a slottable to passive. You have a lot of different options here. So increase your healing done by area effect. If you're in a trial, you're spamming healing springs, this is probably a must. I'm not doing that per se, so I don't mess with it. Increases your healing done with healing over time. You'll notice I do quite a bit of healing over time effects, so I like this one. And then I like potions. So after you drink a potion, you cost your magic and stam abilities by for 6 seconds, reduced by 75%. But play around with it. Ultimately, you're going to swap things in and out. It's real easy to go into a trial and just go, okay, I'll swap this one and this one. I'll swap Foresight for Soothing Tide, and I'm ready for a trial. And then Fighting Finesse increases your crit damage and crit healing by 2%. I run the Thief Mundus Stone, so I should have pretty high crit in comparison. So I want those crit heals to hit really hard. It's a real good one. But you got 4 slottables. There's a lot of good choices to have. Again, play around with it. Red Tree. So the one I like to focus on here, the 3 slottables pretty much folks take right away are these out here. The siphoning spell, I'm not doing a whole lot of damage and I'm not killing a lot of ads, so this magic recovery to me is not that important. I do like this. Decrease the time it takes to resurrect an ally by 33%. You combine that with my class passive, I can get people popped up. And if you're running Kagranak's Hope or something too, you can just do almost an instant res. So if you're doing some new content, you pop that Resto Alt, you have this slottable, you can pop someone up real quick. And then keep them going over here. Mystic, Tumbling, Hero's Vigor, nice max health here. You do have to go this route, so I went just 10 here because easy. I didn't slot this. Tempered Stole, and then here. So it takes a lot of cost to get up here. And I can understand people wanting to go down this route. So sprinting, I do sprint a lot. So if I'm running some of these new dungeons and other things, you do sprint a lot, and I don't want to run out of stamina. Reduce the cost of block by stamina per stage, that's good. And then another block one. If I'm not blocking a whole lot in this build, unless it's on my Frost Staff, I really do a lot more sprinting than I do that. But that's kind of my setup on the champion points. So Mundus Stone, we're going to grab the Thief real quick, and if we'll do that, let's look at our character sheet beforehand. We look at spell critical, 20%. That's quite down, right? So you notice, not a whole lot of crit. Pop this puppy on. We're at 29% crit. That's almost 10% more crit chance. But we don't have fully maxed divines yet, so you can see this getting up a little bit more. But people used to be running 60-70% crit, so that's kind of relevant. They did seem to change that a bit. So you're going to want a little bit higher crit, especially if you're running the Hollow Fang Ice Staff. Look, I'm not a Mundus math expert, so Thief, Shadow, the Ritual for massive healing, they're all good options that you can use. For me, I've just stuck with the Thief on a lot of different builds. So play around with it again. There's probably not one size fits all. If you're doing massive healing spring spam and you need a lot of healing per second, you could run the other one that buffs healing. But for me, crit is always good. Offensively, for heals, whatever you're doing, you can't have enough crit. Let's talk about consumables here. Since we have a lot of more health, you'll see my health right now, 21,000. That's unbuffed. You have a lot of variety in what food you eat. The food that I eat, you have a lot of different options. Buy stat, recovery, clockwork citrus, if you can afford it, gives us a nice health pool, nice magic recovery passively, and a big max magic pool. So it's a really nice blend of each. There's a bunch of different options you can run. A lot of people run the Witch Mothers. It's kind of a lesser version, so you can see here, I just wasted a lot of gold, but it gives us 21k health. So it's a much cheaper, and it gives you stamina recovery and health recovery, making it a little bit more survivable, but it doesn't have the health. Spring-loaded infusion, max health, and max magic and stamina. So it's a tri-stat, but guess what? Look at our magic recovery. So not exactly the best option. So I like to stick with this. If you're doing the hardcore content and you really need that recovery all around across the board, it's really good to go with. You can do the blue food that gives you max health and max stamina. This is max magic, excuse me. This is not it, but you're going to be pretty much a lot. So clockwork citrus, you can afford it, pay up for it. You got to eat big to get big. Really, really good sustain all across the board. Good food. Potions that I used. Let's go to them. Potions. Pretty simple here. If you're doing really hardcore content, spell power. You don't have major prophecy, you don't have major sorcery, and you don't have major recovery. So use these if you're doing really top end content. I just use trash pots on cooldown normally. That's because they're really, really helpful. But you'll see in the trash pot, they only give you magic regeneration for 28 seconds, where these nice juicy ones give you for 47 seconds with the alchemy passive. So they're worth running and doing the hardcore content. And you can buy some, there's some Crown Store ones, but there's also some Alliance War ones. So you're a PvPer and you have tons of AP, you can actually buy a version of these if you're not an alchemy farmer and do really, really well as well. And then also, don't forget your scrolls and all your ambrosias and so forth. So if you're running content, you really want to pop these, especially before a turn-in, because it can give you a big, massive boost. to your CP gain per hour. So that's a brief rundown of the build. I'm going to show you a clip. Kind of a healer check in the Cauldron. I really like the last fight, hard mode in the Cauldron. It's high mobility, it's resource intensive and heal intensive. So if you're kind of testing out this build and want to see if you can hang in there, what I found is that's a good threshold, especially if people are new to the fight and you really got to pop them up. You got to maximize their resources. You got to make sure you're alive and where you're standing. It's a fantastic build to take new players in, get them through it, and see, hey, am I doing the heals right? So let's go through a little clip here, and I'll just narrate it. All right, so we're doing the Cauldron, and I just died. So our team's gonna wipe. We got some new folks. We're just trying this, their first time in here. So it's a good example that everyone goes through this. You have to learn the mechanics, die a few times. No big deal. We're all learning. So 11.4 million health. This is a hell of a fight. I love it as a healer. So I'm just going to narrate and talk to you kind of what I'm doing and why I'm thinking this. And maybe if I make a mistake, I'm going to yell at myself. So got the hard mode activated. You can see here in the Cauldron, had the same gear setup that I talked about earlier. I'm running spell power potions. So right there, I started the combat prayer. You'll see my little orb come out from Hollow Fangs, and I throw a spear right by the tank. So hopefully he can get it. I throw another spear for a little more damage, Purifying Light, Combat Prayer. So during these high AoE things like this, you'll notice I'm throwing more spears than orbs, or more orbs than spears. Just depends if I want it to get there fast, or if I can let it sit there and kind of rotate. See how that spear goes? Now we got the Wall of Fire coming. Combat Prayer up, throwing spears. And I'm really trying to do my best job of maintaining those rotations. And when I don't know what I'm doing, I'll just Breath of Life. So if I see a health bar just dip dramatically, like the tanks did back there, boom, I'll just pop up a Breath of Life, get them back to health. But I really want to rely on combat prayers primarily for my damage, or excuse me, for my healing. Drop the Nova there, so when those fire lines go down, it's a really nice time to just do massive AoE. So you can see my magic's getting a little bit low. What I need to do right here is reapply buffs, and then I need to fully charge a heavy. So I do fully charge heavy on a frost, get a nice little damage shield, and do some AoEs. I got the synergy, so I'm going to focus on destroying the walls. And I'm reapplying my buffs, doing a fully charged heavy when we're not in pressure. Tank got a little bit low. Combat Prayer, throwing an orb, nuking those little blocks down, reapplying my buffs. So it's a lot of the same here. I'm not applying the blockade as often because we're mobile. So it doesn't make sense in me spending a lot of magic when the boss and all the ads are going to move out of it. But when you drop down like this, it's a great time to apply that buff, that damage ability, because they're going to be sitting there. But high mobility, you're not going to really target it that much. And you can see, as long as my healing and my hots are up pretty good, I'm not having to sit there and spam Breath of Life. I'm relying on my heals over time, my buffs, my debuffs to kind of carry our party through. And especially the more they know, the more they practice, the less I'll have to do that. So Purifying Light, spear goes down right, heavy AoE here. I'm taking care of those little cubes so the DPS can focus on their job. And now I got an ultimate up. The boss is sitting at about 33% health. We're doing really good. You'll notice my potion's off cooldown. I should be using a potion. Deltia, use a potion, noob. There's a lot going on, so it's easy for me to comment right now. There you go. Got a potion off. Did my blockade to get those ads down. Throwing some spears for that AoE DPS, right? It's because it's mobile, it's range. I can do that. Drop the Nova, drop the house on him. It's going to reduce the damage. It's going to be give that nice grab crush synergy. Hopefully get rid of some of those ads. I'm going to reapply my buffs a lot. I'm using Harness because there's just a lot of fire damage coming in. I just don't want to go down. So that's why I'm using Harness reliably here. And then I haven't got a combat prayer off in a while. It's been a bit hard with the mobility and people being out of range. So I want to hit everyone with that. It's just, I should work on focusing on that and throwing a spear down in between. So you can see there, we got an orb down. And once this thing drops, we should reapply buffs. See, I'm close to a resto ult too, so this is kind of useful. Got my potion, got my blockade down, throwing some spears down, and then beam. So beam again. If we get low, we can always pop a resto, but that's pretty much it. So we got to move here. I'm going to get the synergy just because we don't want to get the fire line and get nuked. I popped a resto ult. Why? So it can carry us to the last little bit of this boss. And that's it. Activity complete. It was a good run. A really nice healer check. These folks did a great job learning this fight and trying their best. I absolutely love healing again. I absolutely love healing again. It's so much fun on this build. I like the ability to the battery. The premise of it the whole time was optimizing your group, making them better, and it feels like you're doing that. So if you get a kick out of healing and really seeing your party excel, try this out. Change it for based on what you use. If you don't use the same gear or don't like it, you don't like the same skills, you're doing trials and not 4-player dungeons, that's fine. Change out some things. Ultimately make this your own. Use it to the starting block. You know, leave me a like, comment, subscribe, turn them alerts on, considering becoming a member of Nugget Nation, because I can produce a lot more of these content and get these builds cut up. The reason it took me so long to do this, well, I just had to be right. I'd rather be the last person to come out with a build and be right on most of this stuff than not. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And hey, we got a lot more coming. Thanks for watching.